Hello, everyone. It's Martin. We are going to start very soon. I'm just going to wait a little bit longer for everyone to arrive, whoever wanted to attend today's session. I hope the sound is good. I'm trying out a different mic today. It's just a little bit easier to move around with this. And what I'm planning to show you today, for that, I need a little bit more space in front of me. Usually, I have that Blue Yeti microphone here, but today I am going to use my iPad as well, so I will have to have that in front of me, and I will use my Wacom tablet, so I will be switching between these two, because I have a really interesting workflow to show you today. It is going to be about creating pattern brushes, as the title already said it, in Adobe Illustrator. And what I would like to just double check before we actually get into it is whether my sound is good and the screen is visible. So I will just for a second switch to my screen, and I would like to check if everyone can see Adobe Illustrator and create pattern brushes in Illustrator image. So this is the example, this is the final result that we are going to get to. Obviously, because I'm going to do this all live, start completely from scratch, it will be slightly different. I might use slightly different colors as well. But although here it looks all very similar in colors, originally I started off as completely different designs, but I created this example where we can show them together. But essentially this will be different styles that we can use, like a bit more henna, one of them. The other one is like a branch. Then we have a bit more science related pattern as well, and then one simple one which is more like a hand-drawn scribbly pattern. So all good. I can see the comments. Feel free to use the chat. I'm going to try to keep an eye on that. So let me just switch back to my screen, or just put my screen on as well. I'm going to make my screen smaller, don't worry. I'm not planning to cover up all the screen. So I'm just checking the chat sometimes. I have it on the second screen, and I can see the comments saying that everything is good. Brilliant. So what I'm going to do is I will show you the whole process from start to finish. And as like last time, I'm going to show you loads of techniques. So this is roughly an hour what I'm doing with these live streams. So there will be several things that I'm going to show you, and hopefully everything will make sense. I try to be as clear as possible and to improve on what we've done previously. What I'm also going to do is to use my keyboard shortcuts, and there is a really cool thing. So I'm just going to make sure that this is going to work out, because I just realized that we need to move something around a bit. Just give me 1 second. I move my screen slightly away, so we will be able to see this. So if I, for example, let's say I press Control C or Command C, you should see that straight on the screen coming up. Let's see, I press Command V, you should again see that, and it actually worked pasting in something. When I press backspace, that also came up. So you should actually get a live view of the shortcuts that I'm pressing down. I will still mention them, but this is again something that I thought might be useful for everyone watching live, or also watching the recorded version, because don't worry, if you missed anything, you will be able to watch the recorded version. It will be on my channel. I think that's all that we needed to go through. One last thing, yes, is that if you stay with me till the end from the beginning, there's more likely you will have a chance to be able to win free access to my Illustrator Masterclass course, because like last time, I'm going to do a little competition. So about the techniques I'm going to show you, at the very end I'm going to ask a question, and whoever responds first with the correct answer will be able to win. And last time I did this for the 3 fastest, or I think the 2 fastest users. This time it will be just the very first one, because it's a slightly easier question, I think. But you have to really pay attention. So you might even want to take some notes to make sure that you can respond if you want to do the competition. Unfortunately, whoever is watching the recorded version won't be able to take part in this. But I think that's all. Again, thanks a lot for everyone who joined me today. And I think it's time to get to it. So as I mentioned, we will be using Illustrator, but I will also use Adobe Draw on my iPad, which is a free application. If you have a tablet or a mobile device, you will be able to download that. So on smartphones as well it works, but obviously it's a little bit better on a bigger screen. So if you have a tablet, even better. Both Android and iPads, it was going to work. My voice is left panned. Okay, so it's just coming from one side. That is a problem. So let me just double check what can I do about that. I will probably need to switch to my other mic then if it's not working the way I thought it would be. So let me just switch to the other mic. Okay, so how does this sound now? Yeah, sorry, I can't pay attention to 2 screens, so if you are adding something in the chat, I'm trying to pay attention to everything. There's a lot to look at the same time. So how does this sound like now? So it should be a bit better. Is it still bad? Let me just wait. Okay, so hopefully everyone's hearing me okay now. If it's still not good, much better. Perfect, brilliant. I hope it's not too echoey. As I mentioned, I need space here to work, so I can't put a bigger mic in front of me. So as long as you can hear me better and it's balanced now, that's good, perfect. So thank you very much. Once again, I'm Martin Perhiniak from Yes, I'm a Designer, and this is the Create Pattern Brushes in Illustrator. So let's get to it. First thing I'm going to show you is actually something that is slightly off topic, but I still wanted to mention. There is an option in Illustrator since CS5 or CS6, I think it was introduced, that you can create image brushes. Now, if you place in an image, all you have to do is to just go up to the File menu and choose Place. Once you place in an image, which I already did, there is an image here. Let me just zoom closer so you can see it. So if you see all those shortcuts showing up, that's because I keep holding down a shortcut. So this is an image that at the moment is not embedded. If I drag this into my brushes panel, which by the way you can find from the window menu, so if you don't see your brushes panel, just go up to window brushes, and if you drag the image into the brushes panel, it's going to give you 3 options: scatter, art, and pattern. And there's, by the way, altogether 5 categories of brushes, and these are the only allowed ones for images. But it won't work if I click OK. It will tell me that it has to be embedded. So what I'm going to do is to click on embed here on the top in the options bar. So that's just an important thing to do to be able to use an image, a pixel image, it can be a photograph as well. In order to use that as a brush, you have to make sure it's first embedded. And once it's embedded, you can turn it into these 3 categories once again. So scatter, art, or pattern. And the category we will be talking about is pattern brush, but I wanted to just show you this as well because art brushes are really cool, and I might do another stream on that in the future. If I have art brushes selected, you will see it comes up, and then what you can decide is what's the direction of this. And as you can see, it's something like a hair or strand of hair that I'm planning to do here. and I would be able to set the options and change them, but it's actually in the right direction. So if I click OK, it's already generated this brush, so I can select it from the brushes panel here on the top right corner. So there's my brush, I selected it. And now if I go down somewhere, let's say here, I can already start drawing with this. So you can see, because it's an art brush, it's going to be stretched across, or like following the path that I'm drawing, and the hair is stretched over that path. So if I draw a really long one, it might be more stretched, or if I draw a short one, it's going to be more compressed. But this is actually really cool. If you add a lot of this on top, after a while you can actually build up a quite nice realistic hair. And this is something obviously you can use even for Photoshop. So if you create an art brush in Illustrator, you can draw some strands of hair, and then you can take that back into Photoshop to be used for retouching. So there's a lot of things you can do with image brushes. I also use them on retouching projects on jewelry. So they're really cool, and the best thing about them is that they are vectors. So let's just say I have this one here. Although it's an image, it is actually stretched along a vector path, which means if I use tools like the pencil, with that I can redraw sections of this path. So I can refine it, or I can even draw a twist into it. So let's say I want to draw a twist at the bottom. You can see I could just easily create that with the pencil. So it's a good mixture of working with vectors but also images at the same time. So let me move on, and this might be, as I said, slightly a little bit off topic, the image brushes, but I wanted to mention them because now what we are going to do is to focus on creating all our lovely pattern brushes that you can see here already. Now I might not have time for all of them, but I will try to do as much as possible. For a quick first attempt or first test, I think the fastest one out of all of these might be this one, the one in the middle. So that's like atoms, or it's a scientific pattern. Let's just do that one, and then we will move on to the other ones. So let me just switch on to my iPad now. Hopefully again everyone will be able to see this properly. So if I just turn on my iPad and turn on mirroring, you should start to see my iPad showing up on the screen. Just tell me if you can't see the iPad, but hopefully you can see it. And you won't really see much here on the desk, but if you want I can adjust also my camera just so you can see what I'm doing actually down here as well. I'm not going to enlarge this part because it's more interesting what is happening here on the screen. So this application what I'm going to use is called Adobe Draw. Just checking, can someone reply in the chat for me that you can see both on my screen the iPad and here also what I'm doing. So when I'm moving around you can see what is happening. So if someone can just reply in the chat, that would be appreciated. Yes, perfect, brilliant. So Adobe Draw is a free app, both for Android and iOS. So I highly recommend to download that, and also Adobe Sketch is really cool. So if I go back to Adobe Draw, you can already see a few of these drawings that I started off with. Now why do I use Adobe Draw? And why don't I just do everything in Illustrator when I have like an Intuos tablet and also a Cintiq in the background? So what I found is that using an iPad Pro and the Apple Pencil, I feel even more like a natural sketching style. So I can create almost like a hand-drawn quality, even though this is also a vector application or vector drawing app. So let's not waste any more time. What I'm going to do is I will close this document and I will go back to my projects and I will create a new one. So let's just start off maybe with a landscape format. And then you can see when I start drawing with this, It has pressure sensitivity, which is great. And we have only 5 brushes here, so we can switch between them, and then they have slightly different feel to them. But all of them can be changed how they behave. So whoever is joining now, don't worry if you feel like you missed a lot. You will be able to watch the recording, but it's perfectly fine if you join in now. I think you can easily follow what I'm going to show. So in Adobe Draw, you have the settings there at the little icon at the bottom, where you can turn on and off pressure dynamics and velocity dynamics. So these are 2 options that control how the brushes behave. Velocity dynamics is like the speed. So if I have that off and I start drawing, it will behave differently. I don't know why it's not changing it. Let me just turn both of them off. I think there's also something, yes, there's other options here as well. But what I prefer to use is the first brush, is most of the time is my go-to brush here in this application, which is a very nice natural feel, and it has pressure sensitivity. So if we go into the settings, you can see it has these options turned on, and I wouldn't normally change this. One thing that you can of course change is the size, which you control here on the left side. So you just drag that up and down, and that way you can increase or decrease the size. Now let's just start off with a simple brush. It's actually going to be different. With 2 fingers dragging to the left, you can undo. This is going to be slightly different to the ones I've done. Let me just start drawing something quickly. So if I draw like a leaf, and then I draw another one, you will see what happens is that this is on a layer here on the right side, and if I keep drawing this, I can create a few of these leaves, right? But then if I want to have more of this, so let me just make them slightly more visible what I wanted to create here. So if I want to have more of them, and let's say I want to have also like a center line on which these will appear, I can duplicate this very quickly by tapping on the draw layer on the right side, and then you can find duplicate. So if I duplicate, now I have 2 of them, and to move it again I tap on the second one, let's say, and then I click on transform. So having transform selected, I can use my fingers or the pencil, but now you can see I have 2 of them, and I can align the second one further up or further down, or I can even have them next to each other. So if I want, let's say, I go back, I can use also the eraser, that's the bottom one, the 6th tool we have, and with that I can delete a bit from this, just like that. Now if I go back and I use the move tool or the transform option, I can align this here, and I can also, and this is the cool thing, if I zoom closer you will probably see it better, I can increase its size, decrease it, I can flip it horizontally as well, which can help to make it different, and then of course I can also rotate it around. So you can already start to create almost like a pattern within Adobe Draw, even before you end up in Illustrator, just by using these simple techniques. But of course then I can keep drawing. Let's say I just go back to the original layer and I just start drawing, not erasing. Let's just keep drawing these leaves. So I'm just going to do a very simple one first, just so you can see the whole workflow, and then we get into a little bit more complicated ones. So what I mentioned earlier is that having the iPad in front of me and drawing on it directly is really giving me a more messy but really hand-drawn quality to the whole thing. So I'm not trying to make it look like perfect and nice and smooth, crisp lines. Instead, I'm trying to make it more like a hand-drawn illustration. So let's just say this is something I want to turn into a pattern. So it's not that pretty. Of course, we can always change the colors around later in Illustrator as well. But let's see how we take this into Illustrator. First of all, I can decide to merge these layers together if I want. It might make it easier, so I just selected the second one and then I say merge down. So now that they are all together on one layer, I just tap on this option here on the top right. So that's the option which will give us the possibility to go into Adobe Desktop Apps. And if I select Illustrator, as long as Illustrator is open at the same time in the background, it is going to open up very soon. And there you go. I didn't do anything. It just came straight up. So it's almost like a magic trick, really. And I am going to continue a little bit in Illustrator, but then we come back to the iPad. So let me just switch my the camera up a bit. So if I have this now selected in Illustrator, what I would do first of all is to go into Pathfinder. Pathfinder is great, and within that you have the first option to unite, so to combine together all of the details within this illustration. Because when you look at it, if I make this bigger, you can see that each brush stroke or each line that I drew are separate objects still, so they are separate vector objects. So let's merge them together with the unite option, and voila, now it's one shape. So it has a beautiful outline. If I were to press Shift X, sorry, not Z, Shift X, then you can see we could turn it into an outline, and now the stroke size can be increased or decreased and so on and so forth. So you can see it's one shape. That's the main reason I did it. Now at this point I pressed Shift X again to go back. That's swapping the color from stroke to fill or vice versa. So one thing you could do at this point is to slightly refine the lines. If there's any part that you don't like, let's say this part here is really messy, then we can select the pencil tool. You can see I pressed N on the keyboard. That's the shortcut of the pencil tool. And if I draw over these parts that are a little bit too messy, they can be improved. By the way, if you see F1 coming up as a shortcut, that's my custom shortcut for undo, and F2 is redo. That's just something I change in all Adobe applications. I just find them easier to access. And if you want to do the same, just go into Edit Keyboard Shortcuts and you can do it yourself as well. So once you have the illustration refined in the way you wanted it, that's when you just simply need to prepare it for making sure that it's going to be a seamless pattern. Just like when you design patterns in Illustrator, which is another great topic, and I'm planning to do another stream on that. But so when you want to create a seamless pattern brush, again you have to make sure that the connecting parts, the top and the bottom, will be able to perfectly join together. So how do we do that? Now, well, you can already see, if I make this slightly smaller, we will be able to see that if I Alt click and drag this, and actually Alt Shift click and drag it all the way to the top, this is how it would look like if I don't do anything with this, because at the moment that's the way it's going to repeat, right? So we have to resolve that somehow. One of the things you can do is to use the eraser tool. That's Shift E, the shortcut, and then holding down the Alt key, you can drag over an area to delete into it, and do the same at the bottom. So it's essentially cutting a straight edge both on the top and the bottom. Now if I select it, V is a shortcut for selecting something, the selection tool, and then Alt click and drag, Alt Shift click and drag actually I'm using, this is how it's going to turn out. Now once again, the top edge is still not aligned. What I could do is, with this preview that I created, let me just zoom in. With this preview that I created, I could already use the top corner points, let's say this corner point here, and align it to that point, and then select that corner point and align it to that point. Then all I have to do is to select this shape, right? And go back to the, let's say, pencil tool and start redrawing this edge. It might be better if I just select these points and start moving them. Left arrow is a way to move them in position, and then I can move the other one. This is one of many techniques. I'm going to show you more sophisticated techniques, but this is just one of many techniques. Depending how complex your illustration is, sometimes this actually is the fastest way of doing it. So having it selected using the pencil tool, I can redraw the edges fairly quickly. And sorry, here I just have to make sure I follow the edge a bit closer, something like that. All right, so that looks quite good now. And what I would like to show you is, now that these parts are aligned, right? This is how essentially it's going to look like once it's turned into a pattern. All we have to do is to delete the second half, select the one at the bottom which we refine to make sure that it repeats. So just checking again, if I Alt Shift click and drag it down, that's how it looks, so it's nice and repeated. So now if I drag and drop it into my brushes, essentially we can start creating or turn it into a brush. But because it's set to black, it might look a little bit too sad and depressing. So let's just change the color. I'm going to shift click on the color picker and let's pick a nice, more calming color, something like that. That's quite nice. And then if I were to drag that into the brushes panel, I already know another issue that I would have, and that is that you should have it set to horizontal, so not vertical. Instead, you should have it horizontal. So I press R on the keyboard to get the rotate tool, and then click and drag, and then hold down the shift key to make sure it stays 90 degrees rotated. So instead of horizontal, now it's perfectly, sorry, instead of vertical, now it's completely flat horizontal. And that means now I can drag and drop it into my brushes panel. So once I drop it in there, I get the question, what do I want to do with this brush? Well, we are going to create a pattern brush as we agreed, but all of the other ones are really cool as well. So if I click on OK, we get this view which previews essentially how it's going to work. But there's a lot of options here we can play around with. First of all, I might reduce the actual size of this, maybe down to 60%. So, and that's something we can change later as well. But for now, let's just set it to 60%. And I'm going to click OK. So we have our brush ready. Now what we do, now we can put this shape somewhere away for now. And we can select a tool like the pencil tool, right? And as long as this brush is selected, we can start drawing with the brush. So you have to draw a line with the pencil tool and then select the brush. But then if that's already created, you can keep drawing and repeat that pattern that we created. How cool is that? So not only that, but I can redraw sections as well. Sometimes if there is such a big corner, like a very sharp corner in your path, like here, let me just zoom closer. The Z is for zooming in, so let me just zoom a little bit closer there. So with the pencil tool, I can refine that corner, and as soon as it gets a little bit more smooth, it starts to look better. All right, so that's essentially the technique, but let me show you what else you can do with a pattern brush. If I select, let's say, the ellipse tool, and I draw a circle, holding down the shift key, you can make it a perfect circle. If I have this shape selected and I click on our brush, you can see now it's added on a circle. So what can I do after that? Well, for example, I can duplicate this, Command C, Command F. F is to make sure it stays in the same place, and then Alt Shift drag to make it smaller. And now if I want, I can also start messing around. Let's say the smaller one, I actually want to use a different version of this brush. So what I will do is I duplicate my pattern that I created. I go to the brushes panel and I'm going to say duplicate brush. So now on this smaller one in the middle, I'm using the second version. And to make changes to the brush, all you have to do is to double click on it.
So if I double click on the icon within the brushes panel, I can do simple things like flip along, which means it changes its direction. So instead of going clockwise, now it's going counterclockwise. And I can also change things like flip across, which would change inside out. So again, another just way of slightly randomizing how it's going to look like. And then of course we can also mess around with colors. So there's a key color option here, but instead of that I usually use a different option. Before we change the color, obviously another thing that you can change is the size. So that's the scale. You can make it bigger or you can make it smaller, and if we make it smaller it might look slightly again different, and then I can click OK. There's also a scale option called pressure, which can be interesting. So you can create a variation of size in case you are using a pressure sensitive tablet. In this case that doesn't really make much difference, so I'm just going to go back to fixed and I am going to click OK. So how would I change its color? First of all, the question I usually say apply to strokes, because that's why I created two separate brush, because the second one now is reversed and smaller, while the original one is still using the other direction and the larger scale. Just to show you, if I select the first brush, I can switch between the two options, and the same goes for this second one. I can again switch between the two of them. So now I have an alternative size and direction brush. And if I want to change its color, I would normally go up to the stroke color, let's say, and or color panel. Let's just go into color panel. It might be a little bit easier to see what's going on. Where is my color panel? Color guide or swatches. I don't think I have my color panel open. Yeah, or maybe it was there, I didn't see it. So there's the stroke option. Now you see, although I have this brush selected, I can change the stroke color as much as I want. It's not going to change the actual color of the brush. So what you need to do is to use this option up here called Recolor Artwork. Let me zoom closer because it's such a useful feature. You must use this one, Recolor Artwork. If you click on that while having your brush selected, what it gives you is the colors of that selected object. And the first color is going to be the stroke color, but that is not visible. What you need is actually the brush applied on top of that. And then once that is selected, you can now change its color quickly and easily by just adjusting the hue and saturation and brightness. Or you can also switch to the edit panel or tab, and within that you can drag that little indicator around to change the color. Okay, so we ended up having these beautiful girly colors, which is great. So I'll just click on OK, and that is essentially the workflow. But let me repeat this with at least one more, just for making sure that you understand the whole process, and also a couple of other difficulties you might run into along the way. So one of the techniques that I found very useful is when you want to create a slightly more complex pattern. Let's say this branch is already a good example for that. I can show it to you with that. Or the henna, more oriental or Asian pattern. If I show you the actual final result, where is that one? There you go. So that one is also quite interesting, because there you will have to work a little bit more on making sure that the edges will meet, so that you have a little bit more seamless, in a perfectly seamless structure like what you see there. But before I go ahead, I want to check a little bit the chat, have a bit of water, and make sure that I respond to any questions you have so far. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask now, and I will read quickly whatever you already asked here. So I can see there's some surface pattern designers. Great. All right, I can see that you are discussing the tablets. Yeah, iPad Pro is great. It's not a must. I mean, this is a useful tool. Again, it's very expensive. I was also very is it justified to get one, but I use it also for digital art, so I actually make quite a lot of use of it. So I can see a question: does using the change color option work as an overlay like in Photoshop, or an actual base color? It's actually changing the base color, so it's not a blending on top of that. It is changing the base color, and it's such a cool feature that if I select all these colors here, you can see I have brushes, background color, fonts, everything. If I select all that and I go to recolor artwork, it lists all those colors together, right? And if I go to the edit option there, all I have to do this is the magic button, or my magic option, all I have to do is to click on this chain, and you see it will keep all the colors connected, which means if I now start moving one of these colors around, all of them will start changing in the background. So if I set up my harmony well, then it will maintain the relation between the colors, essentially that harmony that I liked, and then it just shifts the hue and the saturation around. Or I can also play around with the brightness of all of these colors as well, so I can make them darker if that's the theme I want, or I can make them brighter, and as I said, just dragging them around the wheel will change the colors all together at the same time. And if you drag those little dots closer to the center, that's how you desaturate your colors. So you can almost end up having a grayscale version, or you can drag them further out, and that's how you are popping the colors back, so you are increasing the saturation. So I'm glad you guys like that. So remember the little chain there, but of course if you unlock it, it's still cool, because then you can individually change the colors. So recolor artwork, probably worth spending a whole stream on just this, because there's so many techniques I can show you with this. But let's get back to the brushes. I actually quite like these colors, so I might just save it like this. But I can show you how it looked before. So that was before, and that is after. I'm not 100% sure which one is better. They're actually both quite nice. So let me go back to our little example here. And yes, Katja, it's magic, as I said as well. All right, Ramon, I'm going to do a recolor artwork session or stream in the future for sure. I have friends in London. We used to work together in a design agency. And they always keep asking me to explain to them how to use this properly, because they are amazing illustrators and designers, but they just still don't get how Adobe Illustrator's recolor artwork actually works. I mean, it is confusing and it's not that user friendly, so I understand why they are struggling with it. And yes, I can see that's an interesting question from Dab. So I have purchased many brushes. Is this something that can be an income stream that will help new designers that want to buy an iPad, or not worth the time? I guess you mean, is it worth creating brushes and then start selling them? If that's the question, then definitely. I mean, this is a huge market, and you can find these creative markets online where you can buy assets, and it is definitely something. If you feel creative and you feel like you can do stuff like this or better, I mean, this is nothing. You can really create amazing things if you spend the time, and if you're patient, and if you're creative, and you can definitely have a good passive income from that, because selling anything online works very different to selling things like products, because it's actually happening in the background. So as soon as you set it up and you get people interested, you will be making sales regularly. So definitely that's a good way of making some extra money online as a designer. So not just working for specific clients, but creating assets and selling them. If you guys want, whoever knows about these websites, I think Shumi might know of one. You can write in the chat and others can check it out. Or Deb, you can also share with us where you bought your brushes. There might be some that I don't know of either. Or yeah, it might be useful to share for each other. All right, so I think we are ready to move on. We have another 20 minutes left, so let me just attempt another more complex brush. So I'm going to switch back to my iPad first of all. You should see the iPad up now, and I'm going to create a new project. So let me go on to new project, iPad landscape, and I'm going to bend the camera down so you can see my iPad and what is actually happening. So what I will do is the version, let me just clean my iPad a bit. So what I'm going to do is the version with those, let's do the henna. I think that might be a nice one to see, that's slightly more complex. So normally what I would do at this point is to get some inspiration up on my screen, but because I have the live stream going on, I won't be able to do that. So I would just have to use my imagination. Let's hope I can come up with something nice. So first of all, I'm going to switch to a different color. Let's just pick a nicer color, maybe something a bit more natural that would be normally used for henna, something like that. Maybe that's a bit too dark. Let's just test this out. All right, so that's quite good. Creative Market is great, yes. Graphic River, DeviantArt, yeah, these are all good. And DeviantArt actually has a lot of free stuff as well, both Photoshop brushes, Illustrator assets, so it's worth checking out. I would add to this list Behance as well. Behance is Adobe's own portfolio site, but a lot of useful assets you can find there as well. Actually, yes, Ren already included Behance. Yeah, and you can link it to Creative Market, but you can also have assets on it that people can download, or you can just have that link to, let's say, Google Drive or Dropbox or something like that, and then people can download it or have it paid through Creative Market. Cool. So yeah, keep sharing, guys, as I start drawing. So one of the things that is very common in these designs are these nice curves. So one thing that you can do in Adobe Draw, instead of struggling with the curve, as you can see what I'm doing here, is that you can have shapes placed down. So if I use, let's say, this circle here, what I can do, and this is so cool, you can actually draw along that circle. And you can see I still have a pressure sensitive brush. So if I wanted, I can draw around the whole thing and fill it up completely, or I can just keep it up to there. And then, this is the best thing, you can make it move, the circle, and you can make it bigger. So let's say I want to create another circle around there, and then I can draw my second one. So if I close this, so I can just tap on the X, you can see it's much nicer than drawing it by hand, but it still has a little bit of that hand-drawn quality. And of course then I will have to keep in mind how this is going to repeat. So let's say if it's going to repeat like this, I'm just previewing it to you, then that's good. I can see new followers on Behance. Probably someone's watching on the live stream. Great. Sorry for the notifications coming up. But yeah, highly recommend it to everyone. Behance is a great way of networking. I met so many amazing artists and designers through Behance, and I became friends with them online, even offline, met some of them. And I've done one Behance portfolio review as well in London. I'm planning to do more in the future. Whoever is UK based might be a way to meet me, so keep an eye on that. But let me continue with this. So yeah, I can see new followers coming in. Brilliant. Thank you guys, whoever is following me. So what I'm going to do, I'm previewing the way it's going to repeat, but I'm going to do how it's going to continue. So let's say I want it to continue here at the bottom, maybe with a line like that, and then a line like that. All right, so then we can work this together slightly a bit more. So now you can imagine that this is going to look something like this once it repeats, so like a snaky shape. And then inside we could start adding dots, let's say, or we can have alternating elements, maybe have like little floral motifs. That's also very common in these oriental decorations. Let me just make my brush size slightly smaller as well. So sorry if I have to go quiet sometimes, but it's just hard to draw nicely and talk at the same time, and at least I find it difficult. One thing that I found with Adobe Draw is also, although it's great, the palm rejection doesn't work as well on it as like with Procreate. So if you guys ever tried Procreate, that's better in that sense, that you don't get these little specks. You can see here already one. That's not me drawing. That's just simply my palm touching the screen and adding that there. So I will have to delete those at the end. So I'm just going to keep on doing this pattern that I came up with. Just a very simple one. Okay. Again, excuse the silence. If you like me drawing things, in the future we can have meditational streams where I'm just drawing, put some music on, and then relax. Alright, so there you go. That's not bad. I mean, this is not, this is not what I planned originally, but this is something we will be able to use, I think. So let's make it, to take it further, I am going to, yes, I'm using the Apple Pencil and I just dropped it. Luckily it's still working. So I'm going to select the circle again, and I'm going to draw another circle inside here. But now I'm going to use a different color. I got bored of this color, so I'm going to select maybe that nice blue, and I'm going to draw around this. So we will have a nice circle inside there. Then I'm going to make this circle. Let me just place the circle down again. You can create ellipses as well, but I'm just going to create another circle inside there. Let's just draw another line over it. Okay, so we have a circle in the middle. Now, let's remove these. What I can also do is to start adding some lines inside this. And I'm thinking of using another color again. You just have to be careful not to use too many different colors. So I'm just trying to use another color, and let's see how it's going to look in this context. But don't forget, you also have layers. So I'm actually right-handed. It's just flipped. The screen is flipped. So this is actually my right hand. That's my left. So, but there's nothing wrong with being left-handed. My brother is left-handed. So if I create a new layer, a draw layer, I can then drag that underneath this current one. And what that means is if I start drawing now, you can see I can draw behind the existing lines that I created. And if I go too far, that's also nothing to worry about, because what I can do is to delete it. Thanks to being it on a separate layer, it's easy to fix. So let me just go around it. Now this is starting to look a bit more Aztec. So I'm mixing up a little bit the folk motifs, but this is a mixture of things, so that's fine. So if I want now, I can switch back to the eraser, and you can see, oops, that was a little bit too big, that brush. Let me just make it smaller and delete into it. All right, so you can see the advantage of working with multiple layers. You will be able to tell how much faster you can make changes to whatever you draw, because of the fact that I can draw and erase underneath elements. So definitely make sure, even in these simple drawing apps, make sure you use these layers. Alright, I think let's check. We have 10 minutes left, so I think that's enough. We could always make this more complicated. I can't stop usually when I start drawing, so I have to add just a little bit more in. Maybe I will add a little bit bigger brush size, and just add a few more up here. Okay, let's make that. All right, and maybe also the same color that we had before. You have to shoot me down usually when I start drawing these things. It's just too much fun. Not sure. Let's not get carried away. So what we are going to do now, and obviously this is all possible in Illustrator as well. I'm just showing the way I like to start off, but then we will now take this into Illustrator. So the next step is going up here on the top right corner and choosing Adobe Desktop Apps, and then choose Illustrator. So first I will let the iPad show you that it's going to say sent, and then immediately in the background, because I'm logged in with the same Creative Cloud account, it comes up straight into my Illustrator. Alright, so let's just move things out of the way. Okay, so iPad can rest now, and now we will continue on the computer. And let me just move the camera back on me. So you saw I actually use the mouse in this case, because whenever I draw something on the iPad, then I prefer to work with mouse from then on for most of the things that I do after that, because with mouse you have a little bit more precision, so you can really like move anchors around in Illustrator. It just gives a little bit more precision, I found. But of course I use the tablet as well for a lot of things. But let's say I want to now create a repeated brush, a pattern brush from this. So yeah, you can relate to design being addictive. That's great. What I will show you is how I would make sure that this is going to repeat nicely. So first of all, I could select all this and then press Command G or Control G to create a group from it, and then Alt click and drag. I could test how it's going to look like, and you can immediately see that we have quite a lot of issues here. These lines are not meeting, and first of all, it's going to put it somewhere around here. Yes, so that's definitely not looking good at the moment. Now I could keep this one here as a preview of what is actually happening, but there is also another quite smart way of fixing this. And the way I normally go ahead and fix these things is to divide my illustration into two halves. So let me show you what you can do. There's again several different ways, but if I, for example, use the rectangle tool, and it doesn't have to be exactly 50-50, it can be anywhere. So I could maybe find a spot which cuts into less objects. So just to show you, I'm going to set this to no fill color and no fill color and black stroke, like that. I'm using shortcuts. X is the way you can swap between your colors, stroke or fill, and / is to remove a color. But so if I select this rectangle and I select the object behind it, I would be able to now turn this into a clipping mask. The shortcut for that is the shortcut that last time we had as a price question, as the Command 7. So it's under Object Clipping Mask Make. That's Control 7 on PC or Command 7. So that creates a crop, or makes that section visible while the rest is hidden. It's not deleted, it's just simply hidden. This is a good technique, but the problem with this is that it might not work well, because once you place this into the brushes, it still will recognize whatever is outside of your clipping mask. So there's a better way of using this. So what I would recommend to do instead of this, again, there's so many different ways of doing this, but what I would recommend to do is to have two versions of this first of all. So we have one group here, but I'm going to Control C, Control F, or Command C, Command F on Mac, have two of them and lock one of them. So notice in the layers panel we can easily lock, or you can also press Command 2 or Control 2 to lock an object. And so now, or I can even hide the other version. They are on top of each other, so you can't actually tell what's happening. I just made sure that one of them stays where it was. And instead of using clipping masks, I'm going to use the rulers. And with the left ruler, Command R is the shortcut to get the rulers. With the ruler on the left, I can click and drag from that and place a guide onto the page. Again, this guide I can lock to make sure it doesn't move around, because in Illustrator it's different from Photoshop. Here you will see the guides in your layers panel. So it's always good to have the layers panel up so you can keep an eye on it. So locking the guide and locking the duplicate and hiding that. Now we have only this object here available to work with, right? So now if I create a shape with the rectangle tool, M is the shortcut for the rectangle tool, I can just make sure it aligns perfectly to the guide, and it doesn't have a stroke, it doesn't have a fill, it's just an empty object. I can now select these two together, the shape that I created, the group of the illustration itself, and the rectangle. And then from Pathfinder, the feature which I'll use in these cases is called crop. So if you click on crop, what happens is that it's going to include or keep only those parts that you had the rectangle placed on top. So everything else outside of that will be lost. So it's like an intersection, or you can think of it as a cookie cutter. So what that means is now we have the left side perfectly created, and now we can turn off this, the one that we already cut, and let's turn back the other one and unlock it. And I guess you already know what I'm going to do. I will create another rectangle on the right side and then align that also to the ruler, or sorry, the guide that we have. Then select these two together and then crop from the Pathfinder. And then what that means, now we have the two sides, so we split it up. If I can turn off the guide as well, we don't need the guide anymore. If I now turn these back on, both of them, I can select the one on the right, let's say, and holding down Shift, I can move it here to the right side, and I can align it wherever I wanted it to be. Let's say maybe somewhere around there. So what happened is that now in the middle, we have the problem area, but on the edges, on the left side and on the right side, we have a perfect match. So just once again, if I were to move this back here, we know that it's a perfect match, right? So if I go back one step, now all we have to do is to fix whatever is not matching, and we know that if we place this into the brushes, it's going to create a perfect repeated pattern. So let me just zoom a little bit closer and let's fix this quickly. I mean, I don't want to waste too much time because we are running out of time in this live stream, but are you guys enjoying this? Are you guys having fun? I hope you find this useful, what I'm showing to you. So what I'm going to do now is to switch to my tablet because I need to draw a bit. So it's not the iPad, I'm going to use the Wacom tablet now. So if I use the eraser here, I can just get rid of this section. Alright. And what I will use is the blob brush tool. Shift B is the shortcut, and then the square brackets you can use to change the size of that. With the eyedropper I can pick the same color, so I can start drawing with that. So if I continue that line like that, and then I connect these two together, and then maybe we can add another dot here. Now obviously this is all rough and dirty because I don't have time to refine all the details, but I hope you can see the potential in this technique. So now I can select these two and group them together to make sure that they stay together as one object. And then we remember exactly what we needed to do is to drag this into the brushes panel, set it to pattern brush, click OK, and then I'm just going to use it at the same settings but reduce the size of it. So then if I now zoom out a bit, let's just move this guy on the left. If I create a circle, it's my favorite way of testing a pattern. There's our beautiful pattern which is perfectly repeated. So this is a pattern brush that we created with these couple of simple steps that we went through, and I'm almost exactly dead on 1 hour. How amazing is that? I managed to fit this all into one live stream. I hope you enjoyed it, and I'm going to spend a little bit more time on like replying to questions that you have. But before we wrap up, there's just one last thing. Don't forget that you can go back to your brushes, the brush options, and then you can always mess around with the size, right? So you can play with the size. If it's too small, you feel, you can make it bigger or smaller. You can also flip it along, which might be useful. Look at that. So you can flip it completely inside out. Let's see how that looks from a distance. So if I apply that to strokes, it's actually completely different feel immediately. And we can make it maybe slightly smaller. Let's just make it again the scale, bring up the scale. And yeah, look at that. Again, it looks very different. Now, the only thing is that it might get distorted if you make it really big, depending on the angles that you used. So it might work actually smaller. But now, let's also try the same technique that we did before. So I quickly duplicate this, reduce its size. If it's too fast, what I'm showing you now, just watch the whole stream. It's recorded, so you will be able to watch it on the channel. So having a duplicate, I can go into recolor artwork from the top in the options bar, go into the edit menu, link these together, and then start changing the colors around and get a completely different color option on that one. And you see, if you use recolor artwork, and Illustrator is amazing, it knows what I want it to do, even without me doing it. Notice how it created a duplicate brush already for the new colors. Right? It's amazing. So if you know how to use this application, it's amazing. It's really like it just knows what you want as long as you follow the way these features should work. So hopefully this was useful. And maybe one last thing. No, actually, I think that's all I wanted to show you today. So let me have a look at the questions now. And also, don't forget we have the giveaway. So let me just show you what the price is today. Like last time, this is going to be the price that I'm going to give out, my Illustrator CC Masterclass. So if you think you've learned a lot today, this is probably in my course less than 5 minutes, all these techniques explained. Obviously much faster, but really to the point. In a live session, it's always hard to like really compress all that knowledge. But when I record myself, I always compress it even more. So I try to save time and to cover as much as possible. So this, what I explained here, is roughly 5 minutes in the course, and that course is 12 hours long. So you can imagine, I literally try to cover everything possible in Illustrator. Oh, you can't hear me. Why is that? Actually, hopefully... yeah, hopefully now you can hear me. Yes, sorry. So if you didn't hear me, if you didn't hear what I said, I just explained that in this, can you hear me now? Hopefully you can hear me now. There you are, perfect. Sorry. So what I wanted to just say is that the, let me just switch this as well so I can show it to you. So the course that I created covers almost all these things that I showed you here within like 5 minutes, and the whole course itself is 12 hours long. So there's so much stuff I compressed into that course. If you really want to learn Illustrator, I recommend to check out that course. And that's the course I'm going to give away today for one of you fast and smart Illustrator users. So if you will be able to answer the question I'm going to give you. Whoever is first will get access to this course. But what I recommend to everyone who's watching me live, or also who's watching the recorded version, is to go to courses.yesimadesigner.com. I'm going to write it here. That's where you can find my courses, and you can create a free account. So it's not a link, I think. Let me just put it in as a link. Yeah, good luck everyone. Get ready, because the question is coming. Courses.yesimadesigner.com is still not going to make it a link. Don't worry, just copy it into your browser, and that's the website, and you can create an account for free. And there's also actually, I think, 4 courses completely free, so you will find whichever is free you can enroll and just study for free. And then if you feel like you're interested to learn, you can also subscribe. There's a monthly option where you subscribe, and that way you will access all the courses on my site. So, all right, cool. So I can see Deb is already doing the Photoshop Masterclass, I guess. So that's brilliant. So what I would like you to do is to pay attention, because the question is coming now, and the question, whoever is fastest to reply will get free access to this course, and whoever wins, make sure please stay until I explain how I will be able to give you the course. Last time it was a little bit tricky to get everyone, whoever won, and make sure that they get access to the course. And I'm not always going to give this same course away. There will be different courses depending on the topics I'm covering on the live stream. So the question is that I have, hopefully you don't see it on my table just yet. So this might be a little bit tricky, and maybe those who have Illustrator open might be able to answer faster, because it's something I mentioned in this live stream, but in the very beginning, intentionally, to make it a little bit more difficult to answer. And the question is, we know that there are 5 categories of brushes in Illustrator. Which are the 3 categories you can use for image brushes? So that's the question. Which are the 3 categories? I need to see all 3 in one line. Don't put them in separate lines. Make sure you type them in. You can already start typing. Whoever is the fastest will be able to see it in the chat, so it's fair. That's the one who's going to win the Illustrator CC Masterclass course. So which 3 brush categories are possible to use with images? Path, art, and stroke. The names are not right. Graphic, artist, stroke. Again, the names are not right, but I guess you guys might use it in a different language. Maybe that's the reason why you wrote it in the different names. And there's the answer, the first correct one. Giovanna said pattern, scatter, art. To be honest, it's scatter brush, but scattered I accept. And a lot of you immediately after that replied, and sorry, but it's going to be Giovanna, because she, I guess, is the fastest who actually had it right. So I'm really sorry, but whoever didn't get this right, in the next live stream I'm going to do the same thing. So you just join me, you learn more, and then you might get the chance to get the full access to the course. So congratulations to Giovanna. Thank you so much for watching me again today, and I would like to make sure that you guys are aware that I'm going to keep doing this, and let me just check. So this was today's, and you can see that 5 p.m. For London or Greenwich time, but it's, for example, for Los Angeles, if anyone is joining, that's 9 a.m. and the next one is going to be again on Sunday, so in a week's time. And in the future I might do more, so maybe not just one a week, I might do more depending how successful it is and how popular it is for people on YouTube. So I hope you like it. And one last thing I wanted to mention is that, let me just switch onto this screen as well, that if you want to check out Patreon, if you guys maybe are supporting already other creators on Patreon, I'm also there, patreon/yesimadesigner.com. And if you have, let's say, a dollar, American dollar to spare, that's already helps me out a month. With that, you will get access to files, and I'm going to share these assets that I created here on the live stream. You might not like them, but it's a good way of seeing exactly how I done everything. But I'm also going to share a lot of additional things on Patreon. So that's a way for you to help me out and make sure that I will be able to keep on creating these live streams. And also, don't forget to check out my courses. And yeah, so that's all I wanted to cover today. Thank you so much again. All right, I'm going to set a reminder on live stream. Good point. I will make sure I set it up after we finish this one. And before you guys leave, just maybe one last thing is that what other topics you would be interested in, because you are my audience, so I would want to make sure that I cover topics you are interested in. So I already seen that maybe the recolor artwork in Illustrator might be useful for you guys, but maybe what other features you are struggling with, or maybe like just simply type of designs that you would like me to do. Logo design, all right, that sounds like an interesting one. That's definitely a huge topic. We could cover a lot of different things. We could have several streams on logo design, so I might consider that one. Cool. Yeah, whoever is already subscribing to my courses, obviously you will get all these assets that I share on Patreon in a newsletter. So my subscribers on my site on courses.yesimadesigner.com will get all those assets, so you don't have to actually pay extra on Patreon. One thing you can do is if you pay $1 extra on Patreon, you will be able to vote for contents, like both for courses. I'm going to ask people on Patreon which courses they want me to produce, and what live streams, and also what tutorials. But I'm also asking it here to make sure that you guys can have your input. And I can see shading. Yeah, that's another cool topic. Color and color palettes, and then movie posters, typography. I've just done a typography Solomon last time with Illustrator. You can check that out, but I'm planning to do more InDesign streams as well. Would you guys be interested in InDesign? Because I think it's such a powerful application as well. I love it and I use it all the time. And of course Photoshop as well. But Photoshop is there's so much people covering it, so I'm trying to focus a bit more on Illustrator and InDesign. And theories as well, yeah, that's another thing, like compositional theories is another thing that I might get into a bit more. So I can see that logo design would be good, so cool. Yeah, we can do collaboration as well. I'm up for that. If anyone wants to get in touch with me directly, just email me on info@yesimadesigner.com, and I will be happy and up for any type of collaboration, both in design and maybe even in live streams. Cool. InDesign, yeah, cool. I'm actually, it's secret, but I'm working on the InDesign masterclass already, and it will be massive. It's so much to cover, so hopefully I will be done in a couple of weeks and I will be able to release it. Whoever is already subscribing to my courses will get early access to it, so that will be a very, very useful course. I've been teaching InDesign as well for more than 10 years, so all the accumulated examples and issues that people have with InDesign I have in that course. But I'm going to start doing streams as well, so whoever can't afford to pay for the course, I understand, and that's why I'm trying to help out guys here, help out everyone here on YouTube, and share some of the techniques for free. So what is InDesign? InDesign is another Adobe application. It is for layout, creating layouts mainly. So it's for print, but also for digital. Just look into it. Adobe InDesign is definitely an amazing one. Cool. All right, I can see some interest in that as well. So without taking more time of your Sunday evening or afternoon or morning, depending where you join me from, thank you so much again for everyone who joined me live, and I am going to make sure that on next Sunday we will be here again, and I will try to pick a very interesting topic again, cover as much useful information and techniques as possible. And in the meantime, feel free to get in touch with me, and also to check out my other videos on YouTube. If you haven't already subscribed on YouTube, make sure you do, and see you in the next one. So thanks a lot. And for Giovanna, I would like to make sure, hopefully you are still here, is that you send me an email to info@yesimadesigner.com, and also to sign up to courses.yesimadesigner.com. So create an account for yourself, and then I will be able to enroll you on this. So I will be able to tell that it's you because I can see your details here on YouTube. So I will know that in the email it's you. So make sure you contact me, and then I will be able to give you your well-deserved reward for today's contest. Cool. So thanks again, everyone, and I will see you next time. Have a nice Sunday and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Goodbye.